The war will take its toll, Boniface. Things in our camp are taking an interesting twist. Alpha George has now joined us full-time, unlike in the past when he would come visiting every once in a while. He has pitched his tent some distance away from mine. Seeing him here, I can't stop thinking about Logan and how he lost his life. One day I will make him pay for my friend's death. But right now I'll pretend that everything is fine. George has an affinity for women that is unparalleled, and he comes with it to the camp. For the 2 days he has been here, I have seen at least 3 women leaving his tent, but that is not what bothers me. What bothers me to the core is that one of those women is someone I know and met in my sojourn into the Evergreen Pack. Janet. Being an old member of the Two Hills Pack, and later the Evergreen Pack, her presence in George's tent is very suspect. I have heard before about our spies in the Evergreen Pack, but I never thought Janet was one of them. And I still don't. Spies are people of great intelligence, and the way I know Janet, she doesn't fit the bill. Last time I saw her, she had all the hallmarks of a loose woman, trying to attract some attention from men, with makeup and mascara all over her face. So I wonder what she is doing in our camp in general and Alpha George's tent in particular. George likes beautiful and voluptuous women, and Janet doesn't even come near to that. Deepening the puzzle, and I decide to find out what the two are up to because they are still holed up in his tent. At around 9 o'clock I creep past security and head straight to the tent, then hide behind it, and I listen carefully. They are talking inside, in very low tones, but I'm a werewolf. I can detect acoustics from far without straining my ears. "What do you have for me?" George asks her. I deduce immediately that they're not here to talk about love affairs. "Natalie Stevens. You want her to be your mate. I can help you capture her. I can give her to you. In return, I will have Alpha James all for myself," she says. I open my mouth in disbelief. "Why, do you hate her?" he asks. "Does it matter, James? I'm giving her to you. You want her for your mate. I'm giving her to you," she says. I have to find out the motive. "Janet, why are you betraying the Luna of your pack? Why should I trust you?" he asks. "If I must tell you, it's very personal. I have been eyeing Alpha James for a very long time. I have tried seducing him. I have thrown myself at him, but he acts as if I don't exist. I wanted him to pick me as his mate. I have faithfully waited and waited. Then the bitch walks in and boom, he's taken. You want me to accept that and move on?" "Not me," she says. There's some silence for a while as they ponder on her statement. I have concealed my scent, and I am certain no one can detect it even if I came to touching distance. "Fine. But I expected you to tell me that he was your mate, but I won't jump to conclusions. Tell me where she is. I'm going to think about it," he says. Right now as we talk, she is in the Woodland Pack, as part of the medical team. And do you know she can heal her? She touched James' wound and healed it immediately. But there is something else you need to know. Her brother is so protective of her, and you will never get anywhere near her if that man is still alive, she says. I feel pain, betrayal, anger all at once. This is someone we regarded as family friends, and she wants me dead? Boniface is part of my army and I can't kill him. Not yet. I'll kill him when the war is over because he has done many unforgivable things, he says, and my mouth goes wide open. I am here in this unforgiving jungle being eaten by mosquitoes in order to please someone who has already decided to kill me. The sentence has already been passed and I'm a walking dead. According to him, I will die. Not if, but when. Just then they are joined in the tent by someone else and they stop talking. I try to gather who it is, and when he speaks I recognize Matthew's voice. I have done all the investigations and everything suggests that the girl who escaped did so with internal help. So I followed up on deeper investigations and the internal helper has been revealed. At least to me. He is your man Boniface. I don't have the evidence, but substantially he is the only one who can pull out that feat. We need to interrogate him, Matthew says. It looks as if this is the evening of the long swords. Well, I agree with you. That girl who escaped, Natalie, is his sister, and I may state it to you, Matthew. She is my mate. You can understand my pain when I found out that she slipped out of your hands, but that's now being taken care of, George says. Then her colleague was lying. She told us that her friend's name was Catherine Sims, didn't she? Matthew says. Well, I don't blame you, Matthew, but you should be able to realize when you are being lied to. I knew she was lying and let her be, but I'll still teach her a lesson when I get hold of Natalie, George says. What will you do when you find this Natalie? Matthew asks. Some silence reigns for a while, and I wonder whether they have detected my presence. I prepare to take off just in case, but George breaks the silence. She is already mated to Alpha James. The mate bond must get broken, and the easiest way to break it is to kill him. Boniface had the opportunity, but he let it pass. That traitor. One of the reasons why I'll kill him. Now I don't think we will ever have such an opportunity again, so I am left with only one option. To hypnotize her and break the mate bond. I have a good doctor who does that. That way our old mate bond may resurface. I did a mistake long time ago when I rejected her, but that is not something I can't reverse, George says. Many things have been said here and none of them is believable. So Natalie, my sister, was rejected by Alpha George? Is that why she ran away without goodbye? Is George responsible for Natalie's disappearance? The conversation in the tent is getting hotter. Never mind, as a leader of this camp I should have been invited to this meeting, but I wasn't. Now we need to be careful about Boniface. Don't for a moment think that he will look the other way as we capture his sister and torture her. He may kill some of us, Matthew says, and I agree with him. I will kill anyone who touches Natalie. Tomorrow I need him in the front line, Matthew. He is a killing machine. I have heard what he can do. Let him kill as many enemies as possible, then we will choose the best time to kill him, George says. Now Matthew, you need to leave. I have some business I need to get over with here with Janet, if you excuse us. He adds. Matthew leaves immediately because I never hear his voice again. Promise to take away Natalie from the Evergreen Pack, Janet says. I promise. You will get your man, but right now I am all that you have. Let's enjoy the moment, he says, and I hear some commotion inside as they tear into each other. I only leave when I start hearing moans of pleasure as the two villains engage in their moral decay. I feel so much pain when I imagine that such a man wants my sister for his mate when he can't even keep his fly closed. Back in my tent I spent a lot of time thinking. I think that maybe this is the right time to escape and go back home. These people have plans of killing me. I have outlived my usefulness and it's time to quit. But I rule that one out. I am not going to leave this camp without my mate. I love her so much and I have been visiting her every day when the rogues relax their security around the dungeon, which happens almost every time. We have expressed our love for each other several times. I imagine her loss on hearing that I escaped without her. She would be devastated. I don't want my mate to suffer mental anguish and I am going to hang on until she is free. Then I'll escape. The other way out of this quagmire is to escape with her. Break the jail when other warriors are out fighting and only a skeleton staff is remaining in the compound. Take her out of the dungeon and walk with her through the treacherous jungle until we get home. I also pass a few death sentences. To Alpha George, he must die in my hands for using me to conduct his dirty business. I also pass a death sentence on Matthew Sanders. He must die too for the words he spoke earlier, that I must be killed. I'll kill him before he kills me. Then one last thing. I will make sure that Natalie doesn't end up in the hands of Alpha George. A man who sleeps with anything with a skirt doesn't deserve to tie the shoestraps of my sister. Her mate may die in the war. It happens. Every combatant has come to kill or be killed. But should Alpha James die in battle, then it will become my duty to keep George away from Natalie. I'll make sure it doesn't happen, even if I'll die trying. Death and destruction. Natalie. The long weekend is over and on a Monday morning the war starts in earnest. Our side is very energized as we move out of the camp. There are 4 commanders today: the Gamma, the Beta, the Alpha, and James. I'm also among the leaders of a women-only battalion with about 300 warriors. The warriors, more enthusiastic than before, are chanting victory songs for their respective leaders, praising and extolling them. My warriors praise me as the first ever woman wartime Luna who has left the comfort of her pack house and joined the battleground to fight for honor and friendship. Today, I feel it's going to be a day like no other. The spoils will be many. Something tells me that today will mark a turning point in this war. We get to the big clearing that is the battleground and we run to meet our enemies, each side shouting loud chants, ready to kill or get killed. The clash of metal against metal fills the air as the 2 warring armies meet and exchange blows in a game of death. Cries of pain can be heard as fighters get hurt while others die in the sunny morning. I have paired against a strong-looking woman with a sword. Looking at her, she's a rogue, old enough to be my mother. I have painted my face to conceal my identity and we go round in circles, each of us trying to establish the perfect striking position. The lady is a typical rogue, looking so hungry and teeming with rage. She is strong physically but could be stronger were it not for the obvious malnourishment that is so evident. Her cheekbones are devoid of any meat and her neck protrudes from her ill-fitting military uniform. Her trousers sag, revealing her belt line. Instead of a belt, she secures the trousers using twine harvested from the many trees that fill the forest. These rogues need to be pitted and rehabilitated at least until they get back to good health. She lets out a loud growl, possibly inspired by her malicious wolf, then holds her sword high and strikes. I see her sword in the air and counter the strike with my own, and sure enough the force is enormous. With the 2 swords in contact we struggle to bring each other down and she raises hers again and strikes. I'm too quick and I block it again. The sound from the clashing metal so loud that I hold my breath in awe. My adrenaline levels have spiked. She pushes hard but I stand firm. Then I kick her in the knee with force so strong that I can hear some bones shattering. She gasps for air and loses balance, then drops her sword. A minute later she goes down, groaning in pain. Her eyes meet mine and I can see death written all over them. She wants me dead. But she has no means of achieving the objective, or she is angry at me for subduing her very early in the game. She now lies facing the sky, her right hand just a few inches from her sword. I can't bring myself to strike her and I turn to move, to look for another opponent. I have barely moved an inch when my instincts tell me to turn around and I see her from the corner of my eye picking up her sword. Then she struggles to her feet and prepares to throw it at me. I have heard tales of rogues and their expertise in throwing weapons and I'm not going to wait and see for myself. Using my dagger, I sink it into her chest, just above the rib cage where I know the heart is. Her cries of pain spread out throughout the battleground, and crimson red blood juts out of the wound then pours out like a running tap. She doesn't extinguish her anger even as she dies. Her eyes stare at me in fury and I return the glare, until they turn glassy. Taking out my dagger, I wipe it using her own clothes and sheath it. Suddenly I develop a nauseating feeling and before I move 2 steps I begin vomiting. My stomach throws out all its contents and contractions continue, sending me to my knees. I try to stand up but my stomach contracts again, sending more contents out. Yellowish-green substance fills the grounds and I wonder what it is that I ate with such colors. Then more contents are ejected and I throw them out, and I become so weak that I collapse on the battleground head first and lie just there. I'm not unconscious. I am just too weak to get up. I decide to remain there until I gain some energy and get up. I can feel faint noises as the warriors fight, but I know I am safe in the floor. No one can ever attack a person who is already down according to the rules of engagement. A very bitter taste replaces the sour taste of vomit and my mouth is now burning. I now wish for our medical crew to find me and administer first aid on me. I know the problem I have. This is the first time I have killed someone and my guts just can't handle it. I will be fine if I can get some fresh air and drink some clean water. But we are in the middle of the battleground and those two commodities are rare. I remain on the ground for long. Then I am approached by two men, and when I look up my heart loses all the strength and I surrender. Looking straight at me are Matthew and Alpha George. Boniface. I have received intelligence that I am being hunted, to be taken, dead or alive, by the high-ranking Gamma of the Woodland Pack. Now this is just what I needed, being wanted by both sides. Alpha George wants to kill me. Matthew too is looking for an opportunity to have me killed. And now the Woodland Pack has placed me on a death list. I am not going to run away. Not today. I will demonstrate to all and sundry that I am no pushover. I am in the middle of the battleground and I can tell we are losing many of our fighters. Alpha George is not in the battleground. He must be hiding somewhere. Our enemies have come in full force. Even Alpha Zach is in the battleground. Their warriors are inspired more than ever and they fight as if there was no tomorrow. I have already killed one and wounded two, but it wasn't easy. They have given me some deep wounds and I am in great pain. But I must soldier on. Then I identify the man who is leading the onslaught on me. He is a thick-set man with a big head full of long unkempt hair. He is on horseback and his horse flies a small flag to indicate his rank in the pack. He sees me and shouts my name. Boniface Stevens, surrender yourself. We are putting you under arrest. He says. I don't think so. If you want me, come get me, or forever hold your peace. I reply. Well, you leave me no other choice, he says as he unleashes two warriors at me. We fight ferociously and manage to injure them within a few minutes. They're all grounded. He directs his horse towards me, aiming to knock me down, but I have done good timing. As the horse approaches me, I duck to the ground, then drive a sword I have taken from the injured warriors into the belly of the beast. It screams in pain, then goes down on two knees, sending its rider flying into the air. He lands down a few feet away from me and gets up, brandishing his sword. Shouting a war chant, he charges at me, sword held high, and strikes. My sword is ready and I counter his strike. The metals clash, and we hold the swords in place as we push each other. He lifts his sword again and strikes, but I duck and he misses. Then he loses his balance and starts wobbling in an attempt to regain it. I take the opportunity to drive my sword through his spinal cord and he goes down growling in pain. Those who are arrogant enough to give me death sentences should beware. I may be driving more swords into their bodies. I can pack a punch. That's the message. I retrieve my sword from the dying man and clean it. And just then a warrior, one of us, comes to me running. Our camp is on fire. All the soldiers on duty there have been killed and all the prisoners freed. He says, please pass this information to Alpha George and Matthew. He adds before vanishing into the crowds. I need to find George and Matthew. They can't abandon me in the battleground. I need to tell them about the raid in the camp because maybe they don't know. But I can't find them. Where are they now? I wonder. I leave the battleground even before the scheduled time and I can say for certain that our army is overpowered. Those on the front line are falling in droves. And with the burning of our camp, we are doomed. I cross the river into our camp and it's smoldering. The extreme fire has died down. I have lost all my clothes except the ones I'm wearing. But it's a good thing that the captives are gone. It was a real challenge keeping them, and feeding them was impossible. I am only worried about Anne. How I'm going to get to her now that we ain't in the same camp. I need her. Just then jubilation rents the air as warriors cheer on an approaching battalion. From the songs they're singing, they're praising Alpha George. For doing what? When I'm certain that it's us who have lost. The man has been hiding all day long only to resurface with his singing minions. He is preceded by two men carrying someone in a stretcher and I wonder who it could be. Then they arrive and I walk forward to look at the prisoner and my legs get weak on seeing that it's Natalie. Prison, Boniface. They have brought Natalie to the camp. A camp that has been razed to the ground and all prisoners released and evacuated. Bodies of dead warriors litter the compound and there's no evidence of any fighting. This means that they were found unawares or even sleeping as usual and murdered in cold blood. Matthew can see what his lax warriors have brought unto us. And now more than anything else we need shelter from the elements. Then there's the thorny issue of my sister Natalie. She has regained consciousness, but now she is very weak and even though her eyes are open she can't talk. She still lies on the stretcher she was brought in as Alpha George assesses the damage in what was our camp. There's nothing much to see as the only remaining structure in the whole compound is the hut that has the radio equipment and also acts as a cell for prisoners. I decide to stay beside her and wait for George to come back and explain to me why he has taken my sister. I understand his frustrations after losing so many warriors in battle today and losing the camp. But that doesn't mean that he should take away my sister. He knows how I feel about her and touching her is tantamount to touching me. It's evident that from now on relations between us are not going to be the same. Matthew avoids me and I can see him pacing around the compound, talking to other warriors. I have also seen Janet in the compound with other girls and I wonder how she feels now that her enemy is in captivity. The conversation in George's tent is still fresh in my mind and I can remember everything that they said. And their plans for Natalie and me. I'm just surprised at how fast my time has come. What all these people don't know is that blood is thicker than water and if it comes to choosing between them and Natalie, I'll choose Natalie without second thought. After about 30 minutes George finishes his mission around the camp and summons Matthew and they approach where I'm seated next to the stretcher. Natalie is now sleeping and I have covered her with my jacket to ward off the marauding mosquitoes that are so many in the forest and also to shield her from the freezing cold. Boniface. You can see how the damage is even though you haven't moved an inch, George says. Matthew looks at me with some sneer on his face. Yes. It looks as if the warriors were found unawares, or sleeping as they always do. There's no signs of a fight here, I say, with the sole intention of annoying Matthew, and I can see I have attained the objective. He seethes with rage and I can feel his wolf growling inside him. It seems to me that he has declared me his enemy already. Boniface, we need to talk. I feel that you are compromising on our progress in this war. We can safely say that you are the reason the war is not over yet. We can also say that you have sabotaged our mission. Can't we? George asks. George and Matthew exchange glances and a message is communicated in silence. First, today Alpha James killed many of our warriors single-handedly, more than 30 by himself. Those warriors would not be dead today had you killed him when you had the chance. George says and I cut him short. A soldier dies because he has chosen to go to the battleground. They go there to kill, or get killed. What did you expect? For him to stand there and wait for our warriors to just kill him? I ask. They were up against a better man. That's all. These warriors lack training and maybe they could be alive as we speak had you waged your war after serious training. But you didn't. Now see the results. Blame yourselves. Your incompetence, not me. Anger and some guilt consumes them and we stand there wordless for some moments. Don't talk to me like that again, Boniface. I am your alpha in case you have forgotten. You need to exercise some decorum when we are out here, he says. George, this is not the Two Hills pack. We are all intruders here. We are both mercenaries out to gain from this war. We are criminals. Both of us, when we get back to the Two Hills pack, if we'll make it back alive, you will be my alpha and I'll be your subject. But right now, you are just a commander of this ragtag rogue army. I return fire with fire. They have been talking about me and I am certain they want to arrest me, so I have decided to give them more fodder for their cannons. In the twilight I can see the two men getting more angry. Matthew is the most angry and given a chance he can tear me into pieces. About you sabotaging our initiative. We need you to confirm whether the prisoner we have today is your sister, Natalie, and whether she's the same prisoner who escaped from this camp mysteriously. George says. He is trying very hard to maintain his composure. I still maintain that I have nothing to do with her escape from this camp, and we have previously blamed the laxity of the sentry for the escape. I would not have escaped if I were her. The dangers she exposed herself to further outweigh the need for the escape, I say. But you said that she gave out her name as Catherine Sims when you knew her real name, didn't you? George asks. Well, that's what she said. Maybe it's her pseudonym, I reply quickly. They whisper into each other's ears, and I take that time to take a sneak peek into Natalie. She's sleeping soundly, oblivious of the acrimonious exchange going on. We have decided to terminate your services, Boniface, George says. Then that would be a very good idea. I will leave at once. I need to go home and rest. Not so fast, Boniface. Not so fast. Matthew breaks his silence. He walks towards me, from behind George where he has been hiding all through. We have condemned you to prison for the 2 offenses Alpha George has outlined here. You have violated our laws, and you are now under arrest. You will spend 2 years in our jail, after which we will hand you over to your Alpha for more punishment, he says angrily, droplets of saliva slashing all around him and some attaching themselves on my face. I take out a towel from my pockets and wipe my face. I don't want communicable diseases. So that's it? I ask. I know the conditions in their jails. So pathetic. No food and water, and there's lots of vermin like lice and fleas. You heard him, roars George, and as if on cue his guards emerge from behind him. I grasp my sword, but they are already on me. Unlike the rogues, George's guards are well taken care of, and the 3 of them overpower me easily and handcuff me from behind. At that point Natalie wakes up and springs to her feet. Arrest her as well, George orders. The guards surround her and put handcuffs on her too. In the semi-darkness I see her squinting her eyes, and she shouts, Janet, get out of the woods. I can see you, traitor, she says. I wonder what she's talking about, but just then Janet emerges from the woods. She's wearing a dark fur coat that is so big for her. Maybe borrowed from George. James was right. I should not have forgiven you, Natalie says. Isn't it too late for that, Natalie? She asks, smiling sheepishly. You will never see James again, and now he belongs to me. You are a rogue. Get used to that, she adds, then walks away. My wolf growls, and I promise myself that I will one day tear her small but into pieces. Don't touch my sister. Otherwise I will kill you all. I will tear your throats open, I say, looking at George in the eye. And that harlot. Next time she talks like that about Natalie, I'll kill her, I add. Shut up, prisoner. You have no right of speech. Right now you rank way below a rogue. Matthew, throw these prisoners into the hut and lock it up. Then have heavy security around it. If one of them escapes, as is their tendency, I'll have your balls for breakfast, George says and walks away. Natalie and I are herded into the hut, which has 2 small rooms, and locked inside. She is already crying, and I hug her to soothe her. I need to devise means of getting both of us out of here, but then I remember first things first. I have a large wound from the battleground that I need to attend to before I sleep. Natalie, you need to compose yourself, I say. Since you are handcuffed from the front, can you please look at my leg? There is a wound that I would like to clean. You can help me, I say. She lowers her hands and takes hold of the leg with the wound. Then she rolls up the trousers up to my knee and gropes around in the darkness, searching for the wound, and finds it. Strangely, she places her hand on the wound, completely covering it. I feel some chill at first. Then my temperature rises suddenly and I realize that I'm sweating. My heart pounds at a fast rate and I shake from a combination of inexplicable feeling taking place in my body. When she takes away her hand, I feel some relief and I notice that the pain is gone. My goodness, what is it that she has done? Natalie, just tell me what you have done. I say. Relax, brother. I have just healed your wound, she says as she retreats to a dark corner. I reject you, George. Natalie. This is the first time I'm in the same room with my brother Boniface after a very long time of separation. I have recovered completely from the malaise that I had suffered in the battleground and now we can talk. He is so relaxed and not worried about what may happen to him. Unlike me, who is worried stiff. Two things might be the reason why you collapsed after vomiting in the battleground. Reason number one is quite simple. Your body reacted after seeing the blood you shed. It's typically blood weeping over blood, since it's the first time you have shed blood. Unlike me who is used to it. We can understand, Boniface says. We are seated some distance apart in the dark room. The rogues have given us our rations. Some biscuits and a can of energy drink. I can still feel some hunger. The rations were insufficient. No wonder the rogues are so emaciated if this is the type of food they take. Such a pity, and their sponsors like George should feel ashamed of themselves. That one I understand, Boniface. I was even thinking it was the only reason. Now, tell me, what is reason number two? I ask, curious. Do you want me to state the obvious, Natalie? He asks. I can't see him. Just a silhouette, but I can guess he's smiling slyly. Please, Boniface, just tell me. Just assume I am dumb for the moment. I say. Fine, Natalie. I'll tell you what you already know. What every woman knows. You are a girl and this should be obvious. Your nausea could have been brought by the possibility of you being pregnant, especially during the earliest stages when the zygote is being implanted in the uterus. Two things happen at once even before he completes talking. The door opens up and Matthew walks in holding a powerful flashlight. He shouts at us to be silent or he'll be forced to take drastic measures, including separation to enforce the silence. Also, a voice yells behind him, and I recognize it immediately. It belongs to Janet. Shame on you, thinking you are pregnant for James. It can't be. We all know that you only spent 3 days together. Not enough time to get one pregnant. Don't use that line to endear yourself to him. And in any case, you ain't seeing him again, you rogue. Just erase him from your fickle mind. Pregnant or not, it's obvious that they were right by our door listening to us. We are only too lucky that we weren't discussing about escaping. Do you understand? Matthew asks, ignoring the tirade by Janet. Yes, Matthew. Stop treating us like we are your enemies. I have helped you fight in the front line, and this is how you repay me? Then at least please remove my handcuffs since I'm already locked up, Boniface says. He too doesn't dwell on Janet, and I feel happy she has been ignored. I am afraid those were Alpha George's orders. Maybe I can cuff them from the front. At least you can be more flexible, Matthew says and summons someone. He's joined by 3 guards who pin Boniface down as he unlocks the handcuffs. They turn him around and put them back on, his hands at the front. I am still seated at my corner and nobody touches me. I can still hear Janet talking outside and most of the things she says are utter crap that I decide to ignore. She has no shame at all. She knows that George is her mate, yet she keeps on throwing herself at James. And she is also very lucky. I wanted her dead sometimes back, but now I want her for George. Our Alpha needs a mate now and any delay would work against him. She is addressing someone else, not Matthew because he's still in the hut. Also, do you know that she's the one responsible for your brother's imprisonment? She ordered it herself. That one makes me worried. It has to do with the man we apprehended. If I hear the faintest noise from this hut, I'll throw both of you out. We can't spend the night in the open when you are in the comfort of a house and still you can't keep quiet, Matthew says as he walks out. We hear the clicks as multiple padlocks are engaged and then silence as he walks away. I assume he is accompanied by Janet and the other guards because the conversation outside cease. After about 10 minutes, when I'm sure there's no one outside, I rise to my feet and walk to Boniface's corner. Then I sit next to him. I feel so secure in his presence. He is so composed for a prisoner. I would pray that your predictions be right. I would like to be pregnant with James' cub. It would be very wonderful. My goodness, I can't even sleep now. I'm excited. I hadn't thought about it that way. I whisper ever so slightly to his ear. Yes, Natalie, I would recommend him over this scoundrel George. He is a good man, and part of my woes come from my decision not to kill him. I couldn't do it knowing only too well that it would hurt you. He whispers back. Thanks, Boniface. You are a very good man. But why did you join their side knowing that they weren't good men? I ask him. He clears his throat and spits into the brick wall. Then he whispers back. I regret every decision I made, but now I am happy I am not going to fight again. I will work at freeing us, then we will escape and go back home. Our parents are dying of anxiety. They were so hurt when you left, and I know they are more worried about me. He says. We talk for a very long time until the noises around us go silent. The rogue army is asleep. This is one night I will treasure. Being with my brother and talking about everything. Our past, present, and plans for the future. He plans on freeing us, then when I'm safely away he will defect to the Woodland Pack and help them win the war, after which he will settle down with his mate Anne. Such good plans. When we finally fall asleep on the dusty floor, I'm so exhausted, and I dream that we are all free and at our parents' house back at the Two Hills Pack. In the morning the door opens and George walks in alone. I am leaving this camp in the next 30 minutes, and I am leaving with you, Natalie. I am only telling you so that you can prepare yourself and bid farewell to your brother. We are going back to our home, the Two Hills Pack. You are going to become my Luna. My mate, he says. He doesn't wait for my reply, and he bangs the door and leaves. Listen, Natalie, he's taking you to his dungeons, but I have a question. He says that he is your mate, and you say that he was once your mate before he rejected you. Have you ever rejected him on your part? He asks. I get what he is implying, that there's an element of a bond between us. But that was broken once I developed a mate bond with James. Once he walks through this door, you need to utter the words of rejection to him, because you never uttered them. He needs to feel the pain of rejection, just like you did. Then that way he will be able to look for a mate elsewhere. He adds. I ponder over his statement for a while and see the sense in it. I'm going to do it. Just then the door opens and he comes in again. He has changed his clothes, done away with his military fatigues, and now he is in a casual shirt and denim pants. I don't have time to waste, and I have already crammed my message. I'm Natalie Stevens. The Luna of the Evergreen Pack reject you, George Alfred, and you can never be my mate. I renounce any remnants of a bond that may exist between us because I am now mated to Alpha James of the Evergreen Pack, and nobody can break our mate bond. Especially now that I am expecting his cub. I say. His eyes almost pop out of their sockets as a surge of pain goes through him. He grits his teeth as his hands clasp around his chest and he goes down on his knees. Sweat beads form on his face, then his hands touch the floor. He's now on his fours. The wave lasts about a minute and he gets up, visibly angry. His face is a network of veins and his eyes are on the verge of the yellow hue. We'll see about that, Natalie. When I am through with you, you will say the same exact words to break your perceived bond with Alpha James, if he will still be alive. Because as we speak a battalion has been formed to kill him, and they will not fail like your brother here did. James is as good as dead now. As for his cub, don't worry, that one can easily be taken care of by our able doctors. He says. Boniface growls in anger and I am scared of him. I have never seen him so agitated. I shift my gaze to him. I will kill you, George. I'll kill you. He shouts and springs to his feet, then walks towards the door where George is standing. The two men stare at each other, George tauntingly and Boniface with anger. If someone kills you before I do, I'll kill them too, Boniface says. A punch from George sends Boniface sprawling on the floor. Then one of his guards takes my hand and we walk out of the hut. I hear the door shutting and I say some farewell to Boniface. I wish to see him soon. I'll drink your blood, you bastard, are the last words I hear as I am marched out of the camp and into the woods. George is leading while two guards drag me through the dense undergrowth. We left as the other warriors left for the battle, and George's words still haunt me, that they have a whole battalion dedicated to killing James. Boniface is no longer in the battleground, at least to offer some protection to James, and that troubles me. But then I remember Janet. There must be some understanding that they let James live for her sake. I am so confused by everything, and before I know it we are boarding a vehicle that has been waiting at the edge of the forest. I'm bundled at the trunk, still in handcuffs, and the car moves off at high speed. Please, James, help me, I pray.
Away with the handcuffs, James. Yesterday was the day the war was fought properly. The rogue army was beaten to a pulp, and if they manage to rise again, then I'll applaud their spirit. By the time we left the battleground there were about 100 of their fighters dead and a large number wounded. Their top commanders had escaped or hidden themselves from the juggernaut that was our army. Whatever had motivated us should stay with us even today and into the future. However, we suffered losses too, and our biggest loss was the death of one of our leaders, Gamma Ferdinand Edmonds. He had charged at Boniface Stevens with at least 4 of our men. Boniface had injured the man and struck a lethal blow on Ferdinand, killing him on the spot. We had learned of his death very late in the evening because we were held elsewhere fighting. His trusted men had brought his body home, and his family and the whole pack were inconsolable. Also, I learned rather late that Alpha George was in the battleground. I wish I had known earlier. I would have made sure to counter him. He would be dead right now, but he seems to have come for a different purpose other than fighting. Our people report that he took away Natalie, who had fallen sick at the battleground. Again, I failed her because I should have taken care of her when she fell sick or rescued her before they took her to their camp. Plans are afoot to raid the camp again and rescue her. I wonder where she spent the night. Maybe in the cold or atop a tree, because our warriors razed the rogue's camp to the ground in the previous raid. The planned raid today, as the other warriors will be fighting in the battleground, will be led by Gamma Ferdinand's son Willis. I visited their home last night and he was seething with rage, eager for revenge. Tell me, Alpha James, how will I get hold of this Boniface Stevens who killed my father? I must avenge my father's death. That's the only way he will rest in peace, he said. My friend Willis, never do anything when you are angry. Never let ire be your motivation. Your father died in combat, as did many other warriors, and when two warriors engage, one of them must be defeated. Boniface was only doing his duty. There is nothing personal. I tried to dissuade him. No, Alpha, I have already made my decision. Tomorrow morning when the battle starts, I will frisk the whole lot, looking for Boniface. I want to dispatch him to the land of the dead. I have promised my father, or what is left of him, that his killer is going to face the consequences. My father can't rest in peace when his killer is still roaming around free. His voice was raised, scaring even his mother, who remained calm throughout the evening. Well, maybe you speak like this because you are angry and sorrowful. Why don't you sleep on it and we will revisit the issue in the morning? I had asked him before leaving. I don't think that sleeping on it for one night, or 2, or 10 will alter how I feel about that scoundrel, but we will see in the morning. Good night, Alpha James. I could still hear him using cursing words as I left their house. Our war council sent spies overnight to the rogue camp and they came back with reports that the same Boniface Stevens Willis had vowed to kill had been imprisoned by his camp for what they called sabotage. He was in the same holding cell as Natalie, and that gave me some reprieve. Natalie was safe with her brother. They reported something else, the presence of one of our members at the camp, one Janet. At the mention of that name I remembered my conversation with Natalie. This Janet will have a lot of questions to answer when the war comes to an end. when we go back home. The War Council has just risen up from the round table, and one of the deliberations was to let Willis lead a small team into the rogue camp to rescue Natalie. They can do as they please with Boniface, the council ruled, though it was my silent prayer that he be set free. Natalie's freedom, however, is my top priority. I would like to welcome her back here and apologize to her for my negligence. Then I will confine her to other duties outside the battleground. I can't risk losing her again. I meet with Willis as he prepares his 4 men for the assault on the rogue camp, or what remains of it. He is still angry and holds the stand that Boniface must die for killing his father. I gather that the family buried Gamma Ferdinand in the middle of the night as he had written in his will. Willis is going to take up his place in the leadership of the pack, but it looks as if he wants to prove to the elders that he is up to the task. When he was invited to take up his father's chair at the round table, he declined, stating that he will only take it once he has punished Boniface, once he has avenged his father. I should tell him that I have fought this Boniface and he is no pushover. Willis, I wish you all the best. Please bring my mate back here and I will be forever grateful. I tell him as we pace the pack grounds. Don't worry, that is my first priority. The second is to destroy what was left of that pathetic breeding ground they call a camp. Boniface's death comes a distant third. I'll only deal with him after everything else is accomplished. He says, I admire his courage and confidence. And beware, this Boniface is a honed warrior. He is very strong and agile. I have fought him myself. I say, it's my duty to prepare him for what awaits him. But you said he was in prison. How will he fight in prison? We'll just open the prison and cut his neck. That's simple. He says, I pity this Boniface. He will be executed without being given a chance to fight for himself if Willis is going to succeed with his plan. We part ways as he leaves. We will also be leaving in a moment. Our plan is to capture or kill the only remaining commander of the rogues, Matthew Sanders.
Boniface. After they take out Natalie, I am now convinced that I am completely at the mercy of Matthew. Now, Matthew believes that I am the only reason why they have failed in the war and I can't expect any mercy from him. George may come back or not, and Matthew on the battleground alone, with his unmotivated and malnourished warriors, stands no chance against the strong and energized efforts of the 2 packs. If I were Matthew, I would ask for a truce, and I am doubtful the advancing warriors would grant it, but I try anyway. Breakfast is a packet of biscuits and a can of energy drink. As I take it, Matthew comes in. He's dressed in his usual military fatigues that have seen better days. Good morning, Boniface. I'm sorry matters have come to this, but these are difficult times and difficult decisions have to be made. I will, however, make sure that we look after you and give you proper treatment. And when we win the war and form our own pack, we will not forget your contribution. He says. Some of the things he has said are just a pipe dream that will never come true, but I don't want to tell him the truth. They are losing the war, and from the intelligence I gathered yesterday, there is a death penalty against the leaders, especially Matthew and I. Since I am not participating in the war today, I guess that all attention will be concentrated on him. He will be lucky if he comes home alive, but that's his problem now. Take your time and rest now, he says as he closes the door. Could be the last time I'm seeing him. The battle today is going to be fierce as the opponents try to avenge the death of their Gamma, the very senior official that I killed yesterday. Matthew is in an unenviable position. They leave the camp singing victory songs and I can't help but smile. Which victory? At around 10 o'clock I get some sleep and drift away. Then I get startled and my senses go to high alert. Something is wrong. Something tells me that the camp may suffer another attack, and that makes me even more alert. If indeed attackers come and find me here, handcuffed, then I'll be a sitting duck and I'll be slaughtered like an animal, just like they slaughtered the guards yesterday. I must do something, now. I get to my feet and walk to the stand where the radio equipment is kept and rummage around, looking for something to pick the handcuffs with. I find a protruding wire and start the process immediately. I am barely started when I hear a loud thud outside as if someone has fallen. My heart pounds inside my chest. My goodness, My prediction was right. The attack has started and the attackers are using stealth as a weapon. Another thud followed by a scream fills the air. I must pick these cuffs quickly if I don't want to die. Many more screams can be heard across the camp as the attackers decimate the warriors. It's only a matter of time before they get at me. Luckily for me, the cuff on my right hand springs open. I can now use both hands. I concentrate on picking the remaining cuffs and I succeed. I throw away the handcuffs just as I hear someone fiddling with the padlocks outside. If I'm going to die, I'll die fighting. Injection. Natalie. Blindfolded and with my mouth gagged. I do not know what is happening around me except that we are moving at high speed to an unknown destination. I can hear the sounds of the wind as the car whizzes against it on the bumpy road. Occasionally, the car hits the huge bumps and veers off the road into rough terrain, probably a forest, and at one point it gets stuck and I hear the commotion outside as they try to push it back to the road. I can tell that we are in a deserted area because I haven't heard anything related to human activity. I cry out and kick hard several times until I hear someone prying open the boot. George opens the boot and takes out my blindfold, then looks at me the way someone peruses a book. I can't say anything to him with my gagged mouth, but tears drip from my eyes as I plead for freedom. Natalie, relax. We are going home. It's long time since you were there and I am sure you miss it. Next time we stop, we will be at home, he says, then bangs the boot into place. He is right. I miss home. I miss my parents. I had intended to persuade them to come and join us at the Evergreen Pack, but I lacked the opportunity. We would have settled down properly like the family we are, and lived happily ever after. But then the war happened. Now I'm here, kidnapped by the alpha who rejected me when I was a young girl. I remember how much that hurt me. I remember what I went through, running through the forest and getting devoured by a beast, and I can't bring myself to forgive him. The car is now moving, and the road is now more bumpy. It hits the bumps then crashes back to the road, smashing me against my metal prison. A prison that reminds me of my life in the rogue camp, first with and then with Boniface. I wonder what happened after and was freed together with the other prisoners. I had some feelings of guilt in me for abandoning her, but now I am happy she's free. She is like the sister I never had. Together with her family, they will forever hold a very special place in my heart. Her brother Peter is a fighter, but mainly he handles the logistics of supplying foodstuff and weapons to those involved in the battleground. I am not worried at all about my brother Boniface. If there is someone I know who can take care of himself, that man is Boniface. To me he is tough as nails, and I am certain if he knows where I am being taken he will rescue me. I am glad now that he and Alpha George are enemies. I can't wait to see what will happen when they meet. George is big in stature, bigger than Boniface, but in hand-to-hand combat Boniface can beat him hands down. I can bet all the money in the world that Boniface is already free from the rogue prison, and if that is the case, two things are certain. He'll come for me, and George is an unlucky man, alpha or not. There are 3 guards in the car with George, and I wonder why they're driving so carelessly. I have bruises in my body from being bashed around, and the car hits the bumps with abandon. Then my stomach starts grumbling. Oh no, I just hope the nausea isn't coming back. Then bang, the car hits another bump and I am thrown up, then down, and the result is an escalation of the trouble in my stomach. Nausea is setting in. Few meters down the road and the nausea is in full swing when the car hits more bumps. The exhaust fumes hit my nostrils, sending signals to an already upset stomach. I wonder how I'll be able to vomit with a gag in my mouth and also with nothing in my stomach. The biscuits I had for breakfast are nothing. Bitter fluids from my stomach fill my mouth and I try to restrain them from going out. But just then my stomach sends in a new jet, pushing the contents in my mouth to search for a way out. The gag lets go at the edges and the liquids pour out into the car's floor. The smell alone triggers more nausea and more liquid is ejected. My stomach muscles ache from the exercise. Boniface's words come to my mind that I could be pregnant. This gives me some temporary happiness. If there's someone I'd love to have pups with, then it's James. He is just what a woman would love for a man. George's rejection was really a blessing in disguise, because if it were not for it I would be stuck with him, the worst man I have seen so far. Boniface told me very many bad things about him and I hate him even more. I would choose death easily instead of being with him, but I hate Janet even more. My head is lying on a mess. All the slimy vomit has refused to flow away and it's now attaching itself to my skin and hair. But luckily the car is out of the bumpy road and now it's moving on a very smooth stretch, and it's going very fast. I just hope that the journey ends quickly and I get some rest. It does. I begin to get some familiar scents as the car slows down. I recognize many of the scents around here. We are finally home at the Two Hills Pack. The car stops then reverses while I'm still in the boot, then stops again and the engine is shut down. I hear footsteps outside and the boot is opened. George growls at me when he sees the mess that is me. "Look at you, bitch," he growls, and that sends shivers down my spine. I am not used to such foul language and him speaking it to me is a kind of surprise. "Get the hell out of my trunk. See how you have soiled it," he adds. I can tell that he values his car more than everything else. I try to move, but I have no energy left in me. Even the little energy I would need to cry is gone. He looks at me with a sneer in his face and I look back with those eyes that say that I don't care. I am resigned to my fate. He shakes his head then summons someone by beckoning. "Get a sack and come here at once," he orders one of his servants. A few minutes later the servant has come, holding a threadbare sack. He helps me out of the trunk then slips the sack over my head. Now I can't see anything at all and they lead me away. My head and chest are full of slimy vomit. After walking a few yards we start descending down a flight of stairs. We are going to some underground room. Could be a dungeon. Even with the sack over my head I can tell that we are in dark surroundings. All I can see is blackness. The sack is removed and lights are switched on. We are in a vast room but it smells of dampness. We are way deep underground, and there's no one else except us. "Welcome to your new home, Natalie. You will stay here for as long as you wish, until the day you will accept me," George says. He gives a sign to his guards and they leave. He needs some privacy. Like I said, I need you to revive our old mate bond. I want you to develop feelings for me. I want you to become my mate, my Luna. Denounce the mate bond Alpha James imposed on you, but I'll give you time to mull over it, he says. I don't need any time to think over anything, George. We are no longer mates because you rejected me. Remember calling me a lowly omega? I ask him. He brushes away the question. That's in the past, Natalie. We don't dwell in the past here, he says. Unfortunately, what you want is impossible. I'm mated to another alpha and you know it. We have already marked each other and what's more I think I am expecting our pups. Forget it, George. I'm no longer yours and I'll never be. I say. Then you leave me no choice, he says. He pushes me into the cell and locks it. Then he moves to the wall some distance away, not visible properly because of poor lighting, and comes back with a syringe. Inside it I can see a milky substance. I wonder what it is and I begin shaking with fear. Natalie, I have something for you. This will help you sleep. I know you had a long night, he says, holding up the syringe. He opens the door and gets back in. Unsure of what he has in the syringe, I rush to the corners, but he's already there with me. He gets hold of me and drives the syringe into my shoulder and pumps in the contents. I wince in pain, then scream loudly, feeling the contents of the syringe mixing with my blood. I can't kill you, Natalie. That was a sleeping dose. I am going out to the war. I need to kill James personally, and when I come back you should have made a decision. The injection will make you relax," he says as he bangs the door shut then walks away. The injection is so painful and I feel it numbing my body slowly, and at one point I start feeling dizzy. Greedy George didn't even give me any food, and maybe I'm feeling this way because I have nothing in my stomach. Then the pain and dizziness finally overwhelm me and I go down slowly and sleep on the cold concrete floor.